This story didn't happen to me, but to a very close male friend of 7 years. I was hanging out with him and a couple of other friends, and we were talking about our creepy experiences. Here is the story from his perspective. A little bit of background. I was 16 years old when this happened, living in Amman city of the capital of Jordan in the Middle East. I was in high school. I used to weigh 85 kilograms and was 192 centimeters tall. And I was a calm but intimidating person, if I wanted to be, but never really messed with anyone unless I was provoked to. I just got off school and decided I wanted to go downtown because I was bored and didn't want to stay at home. And I wanted to get some DVDs and games to enjoy later. So I decided to take the bus as I wanted to save money. But I had to take a taxi to the bus stop, which was about less than 10 minutes by car. When I stopped a coming taxi, inside the vehicle appeared a light-skinned man with black greasy hair, wearing a worn-out dark green shirt and a pair of jeans, who looked to be between the age of 30 and 34, addressed me through the passenger window and asked,
"Hey, where do you got to go?"
"I need to go to the bus stop that takes me downtown. It is only 10 minutes away."
"Well, I can take you downtown if you like. I'm going to pass by that area. I can drop you there, and you don't have to pay me."
At this point, a red flag should have gotten off in my head. But I thought that this man just wanted to be kind, and I really didn't want to go through the hassle of taking more than one trip. So I decided to hop into his car, and we would be on our way. Looking back on it now, this was a big fucking mistake. Now there are different ways to head downtown, and I only knew a couple of ways. As the man was driving, he started to take different routes that I had never seen before. Still, no alarm bells started ringing, as I only assumed he was taking a shortcut to get out of traffic. By this point, 20 minutes have passed, and I began to feel uneasy. Usually from the bus route I take, it only needs about 20 minutes to get downtown, where there is little to no traffic. But I brushed it off once again. Then suddenly, the man began to speak in his calm yet suspicious tone.
"Hey, do you mind if I use your phone? I wanted to see if you have any videos or music I can send via Bluetooth."
I found this to be a strange request, but seeing as the man was giving me a free ride, and the fact that I didn't have anything private in my phone, I handed it to him, as I didn't want to be impolite and was trying to break the awkward atmosphere. He played with the phone a little bit, then proceeded to put my phone, with his own, under the empty space of the driver's door handle. Doubt began circling my mind, and I felt vulnerable without my phone. Yet, despite all this, I silenced my doubts and stared to the window outside. The feeling of dread and uneasiness only grew more as I was not able to make out where we are exactly anymore. As the man kept driving, I only started to see empty road with only desert on both right and left sides, with a couple of old, worn-out shipping containers. It is getting darker at this point, and this is where things get even creepier. The man proceeds to pick up his phone and begin to speak to someone at the end of the line, shouting the following with an angry voice.
"I am coming to fuck you up, motherfucker. You better prepare yourself, as I am coming to beat you up, you son of a bitch."
As soon as the man ended the phone call, I knew something was absolutely wrong. Looking more closely at the phone he was holding, I was able to recognize that the phone he had was the type of phone that doesn't have Bluetooth. Alarm bells started ringing loudly in my head. The whole call came out of nowhere, and I could feel a dread, and the absolute fear was absolutely real. I asked for my phone, growing nervous and impatient with each word escaping my mouth. He looked at me, this strange and annoyed look, and said,
I just wanted to see what you got on your phone.
By this point, I had had enough. I sternly looked at him and told him to give me my phone. The anger and fear barely contained in my voice. He hesitantly obliged, after muttering back and forth, and I just knew I had to get out of this car. Feeling a rush of adrenaline, I decided to pretend I was talking to my parents and created a scenario where there was an emergency and I had to get back. So I began telling the man that I returned back immediately and told him to drop me off right here and right now. As I was seeing an upcoming traffic light, I knew that this was my only chance of escape. I was not sticking around any longer to know where this man was taking me, to God knows where. As soon as the man stopped at the traffic light, I spoke to him in my most intimidating voice to open the passenger door. Luckily, there was a couple of cars that stopped next to use, and thank God, the man responded with a menacing look and pressed the unlock button. I got out of the car faster than you could say, "Fuck this shit, I am out," and went straight to Small Run Out coffee break stop in the middle of nowhere as the taxi sped off. I went inside and asked the server if the downtown was close by, out of breath and sweat dripping from my forehead. The server looked at me with a confused yet irritated face and said, "You know you were out of the capital, right? Heading back to Zarga." Shit, I thought. Fucking shit. As I proceeded to call my parents to pick me up from the middle of nowhere, God knows I am not taking a taxi to get back home, or anytime soon. Thinking about it, after a while, that man planned kidnapping me from the start, trying to take away my phone so I would not call for help, and proceeded to pretend as having a fight with someone. On the phone, secretly, message his buddies that he is close by. Greasy, black-haired taxi fuck, let us never meet again. A few years ago, my mother and I had an encounter with a rather unusual taxi driver. I stayed involved in Girl Scouts until the very last year, since most girls quit Scouts after elementary or middle school. Our senior troop was very small, about 6 girls. We had worked hard all year fundraising, and one of the moms was a travel agent. So she got us a great deal on a cruise for all the girls and moms. We visited a couple of the U.S. Virgin Islands. This story takes place on St. Martin. My mom and I had gone off to explore on foot and had a great time. Secluded trails, a butterfly sanctuary, and we got a good laugh when we stumbled across a nude beach. It was getting time to head back. There were a bunch of taxis near the entrance to the beach, not traditional yellow taxis. Mostly personal vehicles with signs on them indicating they were taxis. One driver noticed us looking around and hollered,
"Hey, looking for a ride?"
Nothing suspicious about him at first glance. He was a tall, thin, dark-skinned fellow with an impressive set of dreadlocks and a wide, toothy smile. We told him we were heading to the dock and hopped into his car. The ride went pretty smoothly, but the guy took the long way. He drove along all sorts of back roads, telling us how much he loved living on the island. Almost every little house or shack we drove by, he would point and exclaim,
"My friend lives here,"
and tell us something about them. He chattered the whole way, but it was all happy, friendly chatter, and I certainly didn't mind getting another look at the beautiful landscape. After a while, though, my mom nudged me and gave me an odd look. That's when I realized that we'd been driving like 15 or 20 minutes. The dock wasn't that far away, maybe a 5-minute drive maximum. The guy was obviously driving in circles. Are we getting pretty close? My mom asked. We have to be back on the ship at such and such time, or they'll leave without us,
No problem.
the driver answered cheerfully.
I just like to take the scenic route. These cruises, people don't let you look around. You miss the best parts of the island.
He went back to telling stories, as though he was obvious to our growing discomfort. Oh, fantastic, I thought. We've been tricked into a fake taxi, and now it's taking us to God knows where. Was he a serial killer? Human trafficker? Just a random lunatic? As I was quietly panicking, the driver stopped abruptly on the side of the road. I looked across my mom, and out her window I could see the ship. We were a block away from the dock. He had actually taken us where we were supposed to go. We scrambled out of the car, and the driver climbed out as well. How much do we owe you? My mom asked.
Oh, don't worry about it. No money,
Said the driver.
Maybe I could have a hug.
He stretched his long, skinny arms out wide. Okay. My mom and I gave him an awkward side hug, one on each side. He laughed heartily and said,
You lovely ladies have a nice day.
Then he got back in his taxi and left. To this day, we can't figure out what the guy's deal was. He didn't try to hurt us. And even charging through a hug for a taxi ride is pretty weird. It didn't come off as lewd or sexual request at all. He just took us on a joyride and told stories. He couldn't have been a real taxi driver because A, he didn't charge us money, and B, he parked a block away from the docks, making me think he didn't want anyone to catch him doing this. Maybe it was just some weird, lonely guy who wanted someone to hang out with. Maybe he fancied himself an unofficial tour guide. Maybe he had bad intentions, but then had a change of heart. I don't know. This wasn't really a scary encounter. It's actually a fun story that I recall fondly, but I never forget all the ways it could have turned out very, very badly. Whenever and wherever you go on vacation, be careful. We got lucky. I imagine that most people who pose as taxi drivers to trick unexpecting tourists don't have any innocent intention. Unofficial taxi man, you turned out to be pretty cool, but all the same, let's never meet again. When I was 19, I come home from college to stay with my mom for the summer. She had recently divorced my stepfather and had moved from a house to a ground level apartment. One day, I was sitting on the toilet, peeing if you wanted to know, and saw a light coming through the vent on the floor. Looking closer, I saw two brown eyes staring up at me. I screamed, threw a towel in the vent, and ran to tell my mom and boyfriend what had happened. They initially thought I was kidding, until they realized I was genuinely freaked out. These particular complex had these weird locked crawl space type access points. The police found that the vents had been pried open, but they never found out who did it. I'm assuming a maintenance worker. Needless to say, Mom moved out quickly. After that experience, I always, to this day, check vents, floor or ceiling. This happened over 20 years ago, but still really creeps me out. I've worked at the same grocery store for the last 4.5 years of my life. Of course, I have seen some pretty crazy people come in and whatnot, but this absolutely takes the cake. It was a regular work shift for me as a cashier, with me working short amount of hours, whereas I was 16. I tended to keep the same schedule every week because I liked the days I worked and it kept me on the ball, being in school and all. Since I worked during the day on weekends, I would usually see the same few regulars, which was not uncommon at all for me. One customer usually stood out to me though. I never caught his name, but it was this older man, maybe in his late 60s, I'd say. The same customer would come into my register lane every single week, on the same day, around the same time. Not only that, but he would also buy the exact same groceries every week and would make me bag them to his liking. Honestly, I never even thought twice about this old man because he seemed pretty harmless and just super friendly. I was wrong. This one Pacific shift is where things went insanely south. I was on my register, and I see him walking over per usual, setting his things on the belt, the normal conversation and whatnot. Then he asked me when I go on my break. Not only did I not know for sure, but even if I had, I would not give that information out to this stranger. I have something for you in my car. You should come out and break and take it. I'll wait for you. Oh, I have no idea when I will be going on break. It could be hours. That is okay. You know what? I'll have even better idea. I will get it for you and bring it in here. Now, I really did not know how to take the situation, so I notified my manager quick about the interaction and to keep an eye out for him. Lo and behold, he comes back in 15 minutes later with a manila folder in his hands. This customer stands right at the end of my lane and watches me for over an hour, just standing there, waiting for me, not making small talk with other customers or even breaking eye contact. The manager has been watching him and finally pulls him aside and says, "It's time for you to leave." The customer explains he has something for me and instructs the supervisor to give it to me when possible. My manager says yes, of course, and he leaves. Mind you, my girlfriend is currently working in a separate department and is notified, and she comes over. I will never forget what I see next. I was still cashiering. My manager and my girlfriend open up the manila folder, and the color from their faces immediately drain. I see them shuffling through tons of papers, until finally my girlfriend snatches the folder and rips it in two. My manager pulls me off to the register and tells me what he had left. It turns out he had written hundreds of sexual love poems for me and his deceased mother combined. This man had been obsessed with me. I felt sick to my stomach, and I wanted to throw up immediately. Later on, the police came and asked some questions about the incident, and I gave my statements and such. They eventually found him on our camera system from earlier that day, and they had enough evidence to give me the option to file a restraining order on him, as well as legally banning him from our store. The police eventually contacted him, and when they tried to ask him to confirm what he tried giving me, he instantly hung up after talking some time with the cop. I haven't seen the man since, thank God, and I never plan on it.